Last year, Big Finish's epic 60th Doctor Who anniversary production was Once and Future, which was this epic multi-Doctor story that spanned different incarnations as the War Doctor was degenerating across his timeline, which meant that a variety of actors could take part in a variety of different fun eclectic stories with some really fun matchups. However, when we talk about the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, it also means that it was the 50th anniversary of The Three Doctors, aka the show's 10th anniversary. And for that occasion, Big Finish decided to do an audio novel in the spirit of it being a sequel to The Three Doctors. We've got The Box of Terrors, which was one of their big 60-year productions. This was actually released on Doctor Who's 60th anniversary, so this was one of their ways to commemorate the occasion. So it's narrated by John Culshaw. It's an 8-hour audiobook written by Lizzie Hopley, and it stars the Third Doctor towards the end of his life because he is travelling with Sarah Jane Smith, and it also has the Fourth Doctor near the beginning of his life because he is also travelling around with Sarah Jane Smith. So, this is a story primarily from the Third Doctor's perspective, the Third Doctor and Sarah Jane. So, they're out investigating a comet which has got an atmosphere around it of antimatter, and there's some rocks that are trailing behind it which are found to be containing the souls and the spirits of people who have been kidnapped by this weird antimatter gravitational pull. The Master is also potentially involved here, but maybe not the one that you're expecting. And what we have with The Box of Terrors is a double Sarah, multi-Doctor, multi-Master, multi-Time Lord story where all of these different pairings are converging on the freeing of Omega, who was a Time Lord who originated the civilization and helped give them access to time travel, but at the events of the Three Doctors, he was banished and locked away forever in an antimatter prison. It seems that he's escaping and he wants to wreak revenge. The Fourth Doctor and his version of Sarah are combing a desert landscape with Unit when a big blue box falls from the sky. Let's play a clip from The Box of Terrors, narrated by John Culshaw.
But before the Doctor could even touch the key to the lock, the TARDIS door opened. A blast of smoke billowed from it, followed by a white-haired figure, face blackened by soot. Sarah's mouth fell open as she recognized the shock of white hair, the velvet jacket, the frilled collar. She couldn't speak. She couldn't breathe. It couldn't be. The velvet-clad figure staggered and stared at the man in the hat, who was staring back in turn, eyes wide in shock.
You?
You? They both gasped together. Aren't you rather overdressed for the desert? Said the Doctor, eyeing the hat and the woolen scarf. His future self stared at the frilled cuffs and collar.
Well, you're the one to talk,
he said, then threw his head back and roared with laughter. The newly arrived Doctor glared at him indignantly, taking this moment to scan his surroundings, catching sight of the strange Ogrons, the rocket men, and the vast expanse of crater with the crowd of people peering over the edge. What on earth was this? He presumed he was on Earth. That was the least he could get for the TARDIS before she fell. Let's start with how you've got a key to my TARDIS, shall we?
Well, I would have thought that might be obvious. It's me. I'm you. Or rather I will be. You will be.
Oh, jumping Jehoshaphat.
I know. But you'll get used to it, he said with a winning, toothy grin.
The MVP of this story is, of course, John Culshaw. Now, obviously, he wouldn't be anywhere in this particular audio novel without the written material of Lizzie Hopley and also the great work of Elizabeth Sladen, Tom Baker, John Pertwee, and everybody else involved in that era of Doctor Who for him to pay homage to with his impressions, of course. But John Culshaw's narration here is completely top tier. It's a brilliantly read audio novel. It's about 8 hours long. It feels energized and enthusiastic throughout every single hour of it. His Tom Baker is because I can honestly just imagine just how everybody else sees the Fourth Doctor in this story as just someone who is chronically annoying, and somebody who loves being chronically annoying as well. I can imagine the teeth and curls and the toothy grin. So fun. His John Pertwee is also terrific as well. His Omega as well, which is paying homage to the Three Doctors portrayal. Of course, you see on the cover here, there's the big gold mask as well, the tall one. And also the performances that he gives of characters like the Master and Barusa. And a lot of that does carry the momentum of the Box of Terrors forward, because there's a lot of Time Lord bureaucracy here. I think that Lizzie Hopley, this is formatted as like a 6-part story, an epic 6-part 1970s story. I think what she's done is that she's written an incredibly good 4-part story, but then when somebody maybe above her at Big Finish was like, this needs to be a 6-parter, she did an incredibly good job at padding out the word count here. But it does feel like there's an awful lot of Time Lord bureaucracy here. The two Sarah Janes go on their own subplot adventure, which does ultimately pay off, but for the longest time it does feel like that the two Sarahs are sort of meandering around a bit, and also they can't touch each other either because of the Blinovitch limitation effect, or as I like to call it in this story, Chekhov's limitation effect. See what I did there? I'm really clever. But like I said, I think the performances from John Coleshaw across the board over this whole box set really do carry it. There are some really great moments here and some great escalations, because this is, like I said, this is a 6-part story. It's incredibly dense with Time Lord lore and mythology. This feels more like akin to the 5 Doctors than it does the 3 Doctors, in that there are frequent scenes where the Doctors and Sarah Jane are doing their own thing, and then it will cut back to what's happening on Gallifrey and what's happening with Barusa and what's happening with other Time Lords who are overseeing the event and things like that. But what does work in terms of the pacing, considering that this is on the longer side of the Doctor Who audio novels from Big Finish, at least from the ones that I have listened to, is that it does a great job at escalating the stakes and introducing really cool twists. There was one twist that I did actually kind of roll my eyes at, because I was like, well, okay, we're doing this again. We're doing this character again. We're doing the... But then the way it manifested was really, really cool. I won't spoil it. I won't spoil who the additional villain or additional character is in the Box of Terrors. It's a way for Big Finish to sort of put their own stamp on the story of the 3 Doctors and the show's 60th anniversary, or the 50th anniversary of the 50th anniversary of the 3 Doctors. But like I said, I rolled my eyes when the character turned up, but then when they started executing their plan and bouncing off the other characters and the mythology that it added to that particular character, I really appreciated what they did with it. I do think that that particular villain, though, does end up hogging a bit of space from Omega and the Master, but still, to Lizzie's credit, she does a really great job at humanizing Omega towards the end of the story. He gets a really great scene and confrontation with Tom Baker as the 4th Doctor, or Tom Baker's 4th Doctor, played by John Coleshaw, and honestly, if they had done this story in the 1970s, this is kind of exactly how I imagine that a 4th Doctor and Omega encounter would have played out. It seems really faithful to the characters, where Tom Baker's Doctor has a really sympathetic eye to Omega, somebody who has contributed so much to Time Lord society and was cast out for politics and whatever reasons, and now he's in this horrible prison. The titular Box of Terrors is meant to be this big Time Lord secret, but like I said, there's a lot of lore. There's a lot. It's a very dense 8-hour 6-part story. Some weird Time Lord shenanigans that they've been doing behind the scenes as well, which essentially is a retread of something like Shada. It kind of picks and chooses different elements of Doctor Who mythology, but tries to turn them on their head in a way that means that you have to be paying attention when listening to this. Don't be listening to the Box of Terrors while doing the washing up or writing or doing something else. This kind of needs your undivided attention. I think that the Box of Terrors would have made an outstanding full cast audio drama. Get Tim Treloar and Sadie Miller as the 3rd Doctor and Sarah Jane respectively, and also Tom Baker, who is still recording for Big Finish, as is my understanding, and turn this into a full cast audio drama. I think that John Coleshaw is amazing, but I think that part of the appeal of a story like this, an anniversary multi-Doctor, multi-Sarah story, is the authenticity of the full cast format. Not to say that audio novels are not authentic. Obviously not. It's just a different format. But I think that when something like the Dead Star, which is the second Doctor Ben and Polly audiobook that came out early in 2023, that really benefited from the audio novel approach, because we were dealing with like existential Cthulhu-esque black holes, apocalyptic stuff, and being able to linger on the details there with an audio novel is the MVP selling point of that story. Prisoners of London, written by Matthew Waterhouse, which is the Fifth Doctor, Tegan, Nyssa and Adric story that came out last summer, which is another audio novel, is another story that really that really embraces the audio novel format, because there's so much world building that needs to be done. For Box of Terrors, there's a lot of world building, but there's a lot of Time Lord bureaucracy, and also it's a multi-Doctor story. And I think that this would have been better suited to a full cast audio drama, where you can let the performances and the natural pacing of the dialogue and the punchiness of the structure of the scene transitions and stuff could have carried it forward a lot better than it does as an audio novel. I still do recommend The Box of Terrors if this is your jam. If you wanted a John Culshaw narrated third and fourth Doctor audio novel, I think you're in very safe hands with this. But I do think that it could have been better if it had been formatted differently. Is like, obviously I want to review the story that I've got as opposed to the story that I think that we should have had, obviously. But I think that it's a bit long. Some of the segments are a little bit laborious. And I think that there's a slightly missed opportunity with the two Sarah Janes. One of them's called Sarah, one of them's called Sarah Jane, because they have to differentiate between the two somehow. There's some really lovely character moments, though, between the two Sarahs, but they get separated from their respective Doctors quite early on, and I wanted more of the Doctors with the Sarah Janes, or at least maybe even swapping roles. Like, you would have the older Sarah Jane with the younger Doctor and vice versa. We don't get as much of that as I would have liked, but what we do get is still really good. Lizzie Hopley's a great writer. She's great at this stuff. We are in safe hands with this story. I just can't help while listening to it thinking what we could have had, what it could have been had it been a full cast audio drama with Tim Treloar, Sadie Miller, and Tom Baker. And also John Culshaw could have played Barusa and Omega, because he's great in those roles, and he's great as the third and fourth Doctor. Obviously, you heard the clip. He's been doing these impressions. He's a literal dead ringer for these roles, and he has been for decades. But I do think that with a story like this, where the multi-Doctor approach is the hook and the selling point, a trick has been missed here. But still, I recommend The Box of Terrors, particularly if you like your Time Lord lore, if you like characters like the Master, who the story kind of plays it a little bit vaguely as to which incarnations of the Master are present. And I think that John Culshaw allowed his sort of like interpretation of the text to inform the performance naturally. So if you're a fan of the Master, specifically like Jeffrey Beaver style Master, or Anthony Ainley or Roger Delgado stuff, he served really, really well in this story. There's a lot to recommend about this, there really is, but it's dense, it's long, and you kind of walk away from it acknowledging that maybe a trick has been missed here. And yes, of course, this would have been substantially improved if you had somehow included Colin Baker.
Even more of me.